The views and opinions expressed in these historical letters that may contain vernacular used in the World War II era, the post-war era, and the Cold War era do not reflect the views and opinions of any of the individuals involved with this project, including, but not limited to, the podcast's creators. Good morning, Jamie. How are you doing this morning?
I am good.
Very good.
So, as at the time of this recording, we just got back from vacation, where I picked up a new mug.
Ooh, look at that. And what is this, a little cat that's perched on the edge?
And a little kitty. I might not keep it because it looks a little silly, but yeah,
It's
got a
cute.
little
It matches the
kitty.
mug.
Yeah,
It matches the mug, yeah. Well, I still have NIS Ottumwa.
nice.
It's really heartfelt, this episode, because I will say this is the last episode that I'm going to be using the NIS Ottumwa mug. But our heart is with Ottumwa.
Our heart is with Ottumwa.
Yeah, and we've got the little star for the people that missed it in a previous episode, right? Their symbol with the anchors, the wings on Iowa, and the little stars where Ottumwa is on the map. So, yeah, it's been absolutely a pleasure to read through the letters from Ottumwa from Sweetie's life in the last 20 episodes or so. We spent about 20 episodes in Ottumwa, and about 3 years, 2.5 to 3 years with Sweetie and Ottumwa, learning about that city, learning about the people, learning about what happened there. And we do have one more letter to go from Ottumwa, or at least Sweetie's writing it from Ottumwa about what's happening there. But it's going to be time to travel onward at this point. So this is episode 25, Jamie.
Episode 25.
Feels significant how those numbers, just episode 20 was the Philadelphia trip. Episode 25 is on to new locations.
Yeah, this is a very significant episode.
Mm-hmm. But let's talk about the history, the timeline. So one of the things in the last episode, and I strongly encourage that our listeners listen back if they missed any episodes, through the episodes 22, 23, and 24. Because 22, 23, and 24 really go through what was happening weather-wise at the time in the Midwest. But then we get into June, and the focus is ever present on what's going on in World War II. And we get to June 6th, 1944. And this is D-Day. And it's like, if you consider World War II like a 3-act play, you know, when you're watching a movie and you know when it's going to be that final act and there's like a signal, there's an event that happens and you're like, okay, you can just feel that you're in the end game. D-Day, I think almost universally is considered, this is the beginning of the 3rd act. This is the beginning of the end game. So just to go over what happened, I think most people know about it, so I'm not going to go into it too much in depth. But on the northern French coastline that was heavily fortified by the Germans, so this is the coastline facing out towards Britain, and it's in Normandy, France. It was an idea that the Allied forces from, and I don't want to forget certain countries, but we'll just name a few, Britain, United States, Canada, would have these amphibious landings that they would make on the beach, which has been, I think, enshrined in everybody's memory in the movie Saving Private Ryan. I'm pretty sure that's the first rated R movie I ever saw in theaters, because my parents thought that was important, that needed to be understood, what happened on D-Day. In 2000, I actually traveled to France because I was studying French in high school, and I studied abroad in high school to France and Switzerland, and we went to Normandy Beach. So I have been at the cemetery at Normandy and on that beach where so many perished. The total number was 160,000 Allied troops landing on 50 miles of coastline. It's absolutely, it was a tough day. This is an understatement. Casualties on the Allied side are reported somewhere around 10,000 plus casualties that day trying to take the beach, and they successfully, start to gain a foothold into France. And then there's going to be the big push on the Western Front in the European theater. We were talking about theaters and campaigns of war. So this is the beginning, the big movement, the big action that's taken. One of the most amazing things was recently, there was a little piece of history actually that happened. They recast the Liberty Bell from the mold of the Liberty Bell in Independence Hall. It's perfect remolding. Like, they did the scans of the bell to make sure it was a perfect match. And when they'd produce a brand new Liberty Bell, they called it the Normandy Bell, and they toured it around the country. And it actually went to France. So it's a reminder.
When did this happen?
When did this happen? Let me look it up real quick just so we have the article and I can tell you about it. But I like telling people about the Normandy Bell project that happened. The Normandy Liberty Bell. And it states that in recognition of the United States efforts during World War II, there was a replica to coincide with the 60th anniversary of the D-Day invasion. So it was on the 60th anniversary, so that was in 2004, that the Liberty Bell was replicated to be the Normandy Bell. And it was taken over to France. And I believe it's now in Louisiana. It still exists. You can go visit the Normandy Bell. And this is what I really like about this. It has to do with the historic relationship of the alliance between the United States and France. You know, especially from the Revolution onward. The United States has always had this alliance with the French people. Not always with the British, obviously, because we were fighting against them at the beginning, but certainly by World War II, of course. And if you look at the Iowa state flag, and actually it appeared in one of the pictures in episode 23 when we were talking about the state capitol building, it looks like a French flag, which is really, really fascinating as well. So something for people to look into, the Normandy Bell. But, and I know I'm kind of slowing down here, but we have to think about when we're saying, okay, D-Day has now happened. It's the same level that we have when we listened to the president's speech and Pearl
when Roosevelt was declared war for the last time in this country.
The last time in the country's history.
Had the declaration of war, yes.
Right.
And I think that all of this, the time period that, like, what we have just been hit by Hurricane Helene, there is conflict in the Middle East. So I mean, we have this coincides, like, the current time that we're in really coincides with the history that we're talking about.
Right.
And so in the letters today, D-Day has happened.
Right.
So that's something that, you know, our listeners should take into consideration, like the tone and the tone of the country at that time. The first letter is from June 16th, 1944. So it's not very long after this invasion.
Yeah. And with that, I think that's a great segue. We'll get started with the letter from June 16th. The last letter that Sweetie's going to write from Ottumwa. June 16th, 1944. Ottumwa, Iowa. Dear Jean, aren't we even sisters anymore? Well, there hadn't been very much happening, and as a result, not much to write about. With the lapse of time, a few small things have accumulated, and all piled together, they may make a half a letter anyway. I saw in the Des Moines Requester where a blind boy had taken and passed his bar exam. I thought, that must be the fellow who took you to the dance, but I did not know his name, and I just presumed. All right, let me pause here real quick because she's talking about the blind boy. We are going to find out more about this individual in the future, not at this exact moment. So, yeah, there's a story there. We're going to get a lot more details, not in today's episode about this, but this is a fascinating storyline that we will hear about soon. Lou, he's been put on night flying for a while. I'm not just sure how long that will last. He musters at 5 p.m., just as I'm getting off work, and he gets home at about 4 or 4:30. I have to leave at 7:30, so you see there's little time for us to see each other. They do not fly on Saturday nights, though, so that means he's off from about 4:30 Saturday morning until 4:30 Sunday, when he goes back. Since I have to work all day Saturday, I really just see him from Saturday night until Sunday p.m., which is better than nothing. We made our first trip to Lacona last weekend. Since we've been married, well, really since we went home with Lou when you were here. I was better than I had anticipated, though I have no illusions as to Daddy's opinions. We left here at 6:30. The train was 65 minutes late, and it was 7:25 by the time we got to Sheraton. We went home and sat down to eat. Daddy got a call, of course, and we went downtown to look through the stores for a skillet. No luck, of course, but we found skeleton keys to fit the front door, some razor blades, 2 pair of pre-war cuticle scissors at 50 cents apiece, a couple of clamps, and perhaps a rat-tail file that Lou couldn't resist taking home. We went with Mama to the office and then decided to go on home, found Daddy home in bed, but as we started to bed, at about 10:45, he was starting out to make a call. We were both tired and went right to sleep. I didn't hear him come back home. We got up for breakfast with the folks, and then Daddy and Lou went upstairs to look at the lathe, planes, saw, etc., and after being up there for quite a while, they went to the office to inspect the drill. They were gone for quite a while Mom and I did dishes and waggled our tongues as long and as fast as we could. Okay, so you've got Chester, who likes to be a carpenter and build things. And you've got Lou, who's got mechanical experience. They might have been gone for a while.
Oh yeah, you know. Oh, you know. And I just love, like, I have pictures of them in my head, just standing there with their hands on their chins.
Exactly that.
Looking at something. And not talking to each other, but just like being there with each other, you know what I mean?
Yep. How much do you want to bet, Jamie, that he took those 2 pieces of wood out that he was considering? Remember, like the cherry and the walnut? And held them up to Lou and was like, let us consider. And then for an hour, for all, you know what I mean? They could just sit there and be like, that one.
Oh, you know that Chester loves Lou. And I do have to point out this because it's so cute the way she said it. I have no illusions as to Daddy's opinions.
Right. Yeah.
Sweetie knows her dad. But yeah, the two of them, I mean, you know that they just enjoyed their time together so much.
Especially for these sorts of conversations. At the same time, Chester is going to be testing Lou a lot. And Lou's trying to live up to Chester. You know, his father is really an impressive individual. Samuel Graham back in Philadelphia is working for Bailey Banks and Biddle. He's working as an engraver that's doing designs for jewelry. That's one of the items we're actually trying to find. One of the family artifacts is a little book of the engravings that he did for jewelry for this famous company in Philadelphia. Still, Lou wants to impress Sweetie's father. So if Chester's like, hey, let's go look at tools all morning, which if for any of the guys listening, I could see most guys doing this anyway, he really wants to show his knowledge as much as he can. So they're going to be gone for a while. They came home, and Daddy decided he should do some work with the bees. Lou wasn't to be scared out, so we dressed him in a white surgical gown so they wouldn't get at his dark suit. He turned his white hat down all the way round, fireman style, and he carried a lit cigarette so he could blow smoke at them and went out too. They were out there a good while, and when I looked out once or twice, Lou was right up there looking in while Daddy stirred them up. He came in unstung and very well pleased with himself. And I love this scene. I absolutely love the scene with the bees. Of course Chester's keeping bees.
Of course
he is. And like, okay, so they don't have like the suits, you know, we imagine like the suits with the big sort of, I don't guess you call it like a veil, you know, the screen. But they don't have that.
The suits are white.
Right. Yeah. So he grabs a white surgical gown, which I guess is the kind that doesn't, you know, it doesn't close in the back. So I'm just having this image of Lou wearing his usual clothes, and then he's wearing a surgical gown. He's got a cigarette, because they're all smoking those days. He's got a cigarette, blowing smoke at the bees, being like, don't sting me, as Chester's like diving into this beehive.
Oh, you know that the two of them were just having the best time.
Yeah, doing this, for sure. But again, he's trying to impress him. And when I think about Chester, you know, the industry, the profession of beekeeping is, Chester's an apiarist now because of that. That's the apiarists, they're the beekeepers, the technical, you know, because he's going to say agricolae, so you know he's probably saying let us go out to the apiary, you know.
Oh, no, that's what he said.
Absolutely.
It's probably more like, we will go to the apiary now.
We will go to the apiary.
And then he went.
But he's got this this element. It made me think about Harry Potter, actually. It made me think about Hogwarts, because you know Dumbledore, if you have the symbolism of Harry Potter is quite impressive. Dumbledore is actually in Old English is the bumblebee. That's what Dumbledore's name translates to. And Albus is white, so Dumbledore is the white bumblebee. So I kind of think about like Chester as like this sort of Dumbledore kind of figure in this moment as well.
I can see
Come
that.
on, Harry. Just blow some smoke in there. Well, it'll be fine. You won't get stung. It'll be cool. Yeah, so. It was soon time for us to go and meet the train. We got here in time for Lou to go directly to the corner to meet the guy he rides with, and I brought the suitcase and came on home. In the evening, I went up to Corey's. Mr. Corey got home from Washington, D.C. on Friday with his orders, and they were to leave Monday to go to San Francisco. They were packing Sunday night, and after I'd been there a while, I decided I'd be no much better off, as they would be, if I'd just go home. I didn't work Monday, but spent my time looking after Suzanne and doing the trotting. The Coreys were moved by the Navy. There were 2 trucks loaded at the house, taken out to the base, crated, and shipped to San Francisco. They left at about 11:30 in a tightly packed car. I was so sorry to see them go. To top that off, Lou left in the afternoon, and I was all alone. Tisk, tisk. I was so sorry for me. I've spent the last few nights working pretty hard on washing, ironing, and tonight I mend. I've got to go over on the area, so I'd better get this mailed before more days elapse. Write to us. Love, Sweetie, and Lou. Yep.
This has such a finalized feel to it.
It does.
It feels like everything is just changing.
Mm-hmm.
It gives me a heavy feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's appropriate to the time. You know, at the end of episode 24, we were saying something's coming.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a reason I didn't want this letter to be in episode 24, because now the Coreys have packed their bags and left.
They're gone.
The action has now occurred. Mr. Corey went to Washington and came back. He did make it, because they hadn't heard from him, you know.
Yeah, that still kind of blows my mind, yeah, but he came back.
And that's a drive. They're driving the car from Ottumwa to San Francisco. And their bags are going. What was the song? I left my heart in San Francisco. Isn't that, I believe that's a song? Yeah. The Coreys went to San Francisco. Yeah.
And like the travel that you would have to do. I can't even imagine in a car. I guess they probably would have to stop off at, like, that's gotta be
a lot of stops.
Or at least 2, maybe.
Yeah.
And don't they have the baby? Like the littles?
They have the 2 daughters.
Yeah.
They have the 2 daughters. As far as we know, Betty's still around, and AL.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Betty left her major.
The major left, though.
Oh, yeah, the
other thing. The major was deployed. So, as far as we know, all of the Corey family got in the car and went to San Francisco together.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Sweetie probably would have said she was having trouble finding stuff to write about in that letter, but I don't think she did, actually. I think she had a lot of good stuff in that letter.
It was really interesting. Yeah, she was struggling, and I'm like, this is a good letter, though. You could tell that she's just distracted by what's coming.
Yeah.
You know, and at least writing to Jean is the one thing that's normal in everything else. So, but the next letter here that we have, because we have 2 more letters for this episode, is actually, it's like an interlude. And it comes in from Laura. Laura's writing from Lacona about something else that's going on in Lacona. So we'll switch to Laura, who we don't get to hear from all the time, but when her letters do appear, I like for them to be presented so we can get a little more of a feel for Laura's character and how she looks at the world. So this is from June 30th, coming from Sweetie's mother, Laura. Lacona, Iowa, June 30th, 1944. Dear Jean, one small, interesting baby learning some new thing every day does take up lots of time, and I declare they should have named her Betsy Wetsy or Spitsy Witsy. She's really a honey, can sit alone for quite long minutes if she is outdoors. She even balances herself by holding on to one foot with one hand and pulling grass with the other. I think we know now where Sweetie gets the "it's a honey" phrase.
Yeah.
It has to be from her mom. Yeah. She sat long enough for some pictures. Hope they are good. I crouched down behind the high chair and held onto her dress for fear of a quick lunge. but trusted to a blanket on the ground. She is a little cross today. After a diphtheria shot last night. Did not mind the pertussin much. Has the second try at smallpox. We will have the second pertussin on Sunday. She sleeps fine at night. Her bed is on the front porch. And when it is hot, Florence camps on the blue Davenport. When it's cool, she goes upstairs. All right, and here's the clue we have to which baby she's talking about. To catch everybody up if they missed previous episodes here. Florence is Bob's wife. Bob is deployed. And Florence has had her first child, a little baby girl. So this is the baby girl. I let her jackknife off my bed when I was watching her, but she landed on a braided wool rug, and it didn't hurt or even scare her much. I think she has grown or developed since she has been here. I weighed her the second day she was here. 14 pounds, 2 ounces. We are planning for her to come alone and visit us as soon as she is big enough. I'm sorry I have waited so long to send you the thyroid, but kept thinking maybe Papa would make a trip up there. He hasn't. We heard from Bob after the big push started June 9th, in fact. I have made Frank a shirt out of a pair of pants of Bob's. Be seeing you. Love, Mama.
She has such a... It just seems like she just wants to get it out. Like just the facts. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
she just
she's
has
very
this way of
direct.
writing.
Yeah.
It's very monotone. I mean, I know that that's the way that you read it, but that is definitely the way the letter comes across.
Yeah, it's just, here's what happened. Nice, calm, cool, collected, steady. With Laura, I kind of sense that's how she really probably presented herself to the world. That she was just this very calm. You have to be if you're married to Chester.
Oh, yes.
She's waiting 20 years for these chairs. Like, you know, she's gonna
and I'll
keep
tell
on
you
waiting.
too, as a nurse, like so she assisted Chester.
Yeah.
My mother-in-law's a nurse, and I had hurt my foot one time.
Yeah.
And I saw her go into, like, I was at the I had sprained my ankle really bad, and I was at their house, and she was helping me rebandage it and stuff, and I was like, "You're gonna hurt me," and she kind of like went, and I felt her go into nurse mode where it was just like, "No." And she's like, "I got this," and there was no pain at all, and she rewrapped and did everything for me, and I was like, and that's kind of that's how I look at Laura.
Yes,
That
absolutely.
Sweet, calm.
And she also makes mention just at the very end of the big push. And the big push she's talking about is D-Day. That this is, everybody can sense this, can feel this, no matter what was going on. And it's just, again, it brings back those ideas of what the Midwest was going through with all the disasters. All of that is secondary now. Like, okay, this third act has started. Even Laura, living in a town of just a few hundred people in the middle of the Midwest, you know, barely any phone calls. They have the ability to make phone calls, but they're not really making them. Getting communications from the radio, from telegraph, if they get a telegraph, and just secondhand from the news. Everybody knows this is happening. So it's just that feeling in society. So, but it's nice to hear from her. And she is also having this really wonderful time spending time with a new granddaughter.
Yeah.
Which is great.
It's really funny because it's a very short letter, but it really speaks volumes.
It does. Yeah. To who she is. And then we get back to Sweetie in July of 1944. So we're going to fast forward a few weeks to the next letter that's available. And we get to catch up with where Sweetie is. And this is for people that were trying to figure out on the website. I put up a spoiler warning. But that spoiler warning is going to come down when this episode is released because Sweetie is now in a new location. So, here we go. Hutchinson, Kansas, July 23rd, 1944. Dear Jean, we never heard whether you and Bill got back to Des Moines safely, but we presumed you made it okay. We enjoyed Bill, and we've wondered if he had anything to say about us. Lewis shamed himself for having gone through antics that you and I saw and enjoyed, but Bill couldn't see. He said later that it was a dumb stunt to pull, for Bill might think he was making fun of him. Do write and tell us what Bill had to say. And again, we're not going to get into it in this episode, but this is the reference from the previous letter about the individual who's blind. It is this individual, and his name, sorry to have shared names across relationships, it's another person named Bill.
It's another person named Bill. Okay. Mm-hmm. This is Jean. So this is Jean's Bill.
Jean's Bill. Yep. Mm-hmm. As you know, Lou left Monday noon at 11:55, went to Eldon, and sat for nearly 5 hours before they started to Hutchinson. There were 25 of them in what they called a troop car. One car lined with about 18 bunks, dirty and uncomfortable. I guess all of them were ready to go over the hill by the time they got here. My luck was no better. I had to work hard to get everything taken care of. It was hard on my sentimental side to have to store the furniture, etc. I called the folks that night about 9:30 or 10 Wednesday night. I talked to Mom. Daddy wasn't there, and I got to feeling so sorry for myself. I was too into the telephone. I could not sleep, so I went to the station just to sit. We were pleased to leave at 2:30. It was 3:15 before we left the station. But that's not the worst. I think we were about 30 miles out of Ottumwa when the train broke down. Okay, and before we get into Sweetie's travails on her travels, that was a nice one.
Poor thing.
Yeah. And now it's time to pack up and leave. This is just the stress. She can't really sleep. She doesn't know what she's heading into. And Lou is not with her. So this is very different from the Philadelphia trip. Philadelphia trip, they had their train tickets together. We have that amazing scene where she's running for the platform in Chicago and everybody's running past her and she's running fast. And Lou is just, I guess, abandoned as she's going for the doors and all this kind of thing.
You can keep up, your legs are long, it's fine.
Yeah, you're going to be fine. You're fine. Lou's not with her. So she's on her own now. And I think at least it's a good thing she has the experience traveling long distance with Lou to have an idea of like switching trains and being in these larger areas like Chicago. She hadn't been at that train station. Now we're going to be heading to the big reveal is to Kansas. So she's going to be traveling through an area she hasn't been through before, at least not to any of the notes of the family histories that we found that there was any family previously that went to Kansas. So that's where she's headed, specifically to Hutchinson. And we'll talk more about that at the end. But yeah, she's just like, oh, he's not with me. And then we know the letter's written in Hutchinson, so clearly Lou has now recounted what has happened on his journey, which is the train car was late, everything was dirty. We were all just packed together, 25 men from Ottumwa heading to on the troop car down to Hutchinson, Kansas. And with that, I think since Sweetie is now on the train and leaving Ottumwa, I think I do have to take off the Ottumwa faithful Ottumwa badge. She is now gone. This is a moment. And
this is a moment.
For those who are listening to our audio only, on a section of the website, there's a picture of Sweetie's badge from Ottumwa. And it's in the Miscellaneous Photos of Artifacts album. So if you go to the lovesweetiepodcast.com, without the word the, just lovesweetiepodcast.com. And if you click on Sweetie's scrapbook and go to the photo albums, there's an album that says Miscellaneous Photos of Artifacts. The very first photo with the description is of Sweetie's badge from NAS Ottumwa. After we'd talked with Stephen Black, he has an example of the men's badge from the base at the time. As far as we know, this is the first he's seen of one of the women's badges. So if anybody has any family that worked at Ottumwa, either if you're on Ottumwa now or not, if you have another example, we'd love to see it. Please comment. Please let us know if you do have one of the badges. Because without that knowledge and talking with the person who's the president of the Friends of NAS Ottumwa, as far as we know, Sweetie's badge here that I'm holding is the last one to survive for the women of the time. So it's been a privilege to wear it throughout all these episodes that she's been in Ottumwa, but I'm going to ceremoniously take it off because now she has departed from Ottumwa. Okay. And the train broke down. Of course it did. To add to the stress, the train broke down. We sat 5 hours waiting for a welder to fix a wheel. I should have gotten into Kansas City at 7:40 and left at 9:20, but we got into Kansas City at 12:30, and the man at the information desk said I couldn't leave until 11:20 at night. That I couldn't stand. So I took me over to the Rock Island agent and said, I've missed all my connections out of here 'cause your 2-bit puddle jumper had a flat tire. The man tells me I'll have to wait till 11:20 before I can leave. I haven't the time to spare. Now, there's a fast train out of here before anybody's 11:20, and you fix my ticket up so I can take that early train. Well, we went to the Santa Fe, and they fixed my ticket so I could leave on the 5:15 Santa Fe, better by about 6 hours. I got on the train, but I had to stand or sit on my suitcase clasps all the way from Kansas City to Lawrence, Topeka, Emporia, to Newton, a 4-hour ride where I switched trains again and sat into Hutchinson, where my husband met me at 10 p.m., rather than 4 o'clock as we'd thought.
Oh, goodness.
Yep.
Right? And like this, I love this woman. She's like, she's like, I couldn't leave until that. I could not stand. And
Like,
she did
no.
not put up with it.
And, we get this scene at Union Station. She's frustrated. She's been up all night. She can't sleep. She has all this anxiety. Her husband isn't with her. The train breaks down. They're stuck for 6 hours. And then she gets into Union Station in Kansas City. And after we're through this letter, I will bring up a picture of what Union Station looks like today, because I did visit Union Station. We should be very clear here that what she's referenced is Kansas City, Missouri. Okay, so Kansas City has a portion in Kansas and a portion in Missouri. The train station, Union Station, is Kansas City, Missouri. I think its nickname is the Paris of the West. Kansas City is a beautiful, beautiful city. So if you live in Missouri and you're in Kansas City, shout out. That was a great, great trip. That's a wonderful town. And that could be hard for me to say, being from Philadelphia, because of the more recent Super Bowl between the Eagles and the Chiefs, in which case the Eagles lost. I didn't get the joke. When I was in the elevator. Like, everybody, like, when we checked in, we actually checked in at the Hotel Kansas City. Because again, I like to stay in buildings that were there when Sweetie was there, to know that she might have seen it, or might have walked by, or the train would have passed it. And so we checked in, and it was just after the Super Bowl loss. My dad and I were standing at the concierge. They're like, "Oh, where are you from?" Because they usually ask, like, "Where are you traveling from?" And we're like, "Oh, from Philadelphia." And they were like, "Oh," and I didn't get it, because I was like, why are they, like, sad for me? I don't get it. And I was in the elevator, and I was, like, seeing these signs, and it mentioned, like, Andy Reid. I was like, wasn't he a coach of the Eagles?
Oh my goodness.
And I was, like, still, like, it was just, like, I wasn't getting it. And I was like, oh, wait, yeah, he switched. Kansas City. They won the Super Bowl.
Uh-huh.
The Kelsey brothers. We lost. That's why they keep making fun of me.
Sad for you. So
I'm in enemy territory. Felt like
it was over with by then.
Oh my gosh, it was over with by then. But with an Eagles,
they weren't taking
it's never really over. So,
but getting back to
anyway, I had to say that was really fun. Kansas City is great, but yeah. But getting back to Sweetie's story,
getting to the Sweetie story,
it was even busier back then in World War II at Union Station.
Oh, you can imagine that probably was, and like Sweetie's little, and so like, see, she's such a little spitfire. But I just, but she's by herself, and she was just pulled herself up by her. I took me over to the Rock,
took me over to the Rock Island agent,
and I fixed this problem.
Yeah.
So she was able
Santa Fe. Switching trains.
Thank you, Santa Fe.
Yeah.
But so then she finally gets to see Lou again.
She finally gets. After 4 hours of sitting,
he was so happy to see her
on these uncomfortable suitcases. You can just imagine.
Oh,
it's so uncomfortable. I love how she underlines the word "sat." I sat my way into Hutchinson. That's great. That's great. Yeah, this has not been an easy trip to Kansas. Never has anyone looked as good as he did to me. I was sick from the rider and so tired and disgusted I could just about talk. He took me right to the room he'd rented, and I went right to bed. He had to set the alarm and leave early, but I never heard the alarm, nor did I know when he left. I slept till about 10:30 or 11 when I woke up, went to wash and dress and go to eat breakfast, but after having taken so much aspirin and not having eaten much, I just started shaking, and I got so sick I had to go lay down. Finally, I asked the landlady to bring me some coffee. She did so rather reluctantly, and at the first sip I took, I thought I'd feel better. That first gulp went down and turned around and started right back up while I made a frantic dash to the bathroom. Just as soon as I'd thrown up, I began to feel better, and after waiting a little bit, I polished off the coffee, 2 slices of toast, and half a peach that she'd brought up. I felt fine in a little bit, but I sure felt rotten for a few minutes. Yeah, this is so relatable.
Oh, yeah.
It's so relatable. I don't know about for you, Jamie, but whenever I just feel sick, I'm just gonna have some coffee. But, I mean, outside of anything else, it's like, you know what? It's fine. I have this headache. I haven't eaten. That's why the landlady's like, are you sure about that? Like, that doesn't seem like a good idea. Just get the coffee. It's fine. So,
honestly, Allison, the very first thing I do when I get up in the morning is drink coffee.
Yep.
And I'm not even joking. Like, I'm not even joking.
Yeah.
Like, that's literally the first thing if I do not do that. So when I was just on vacation with my sisters.
Yeah.
And my family. And I got up and my one sister came over and we were talking and I had my coffee. And as soon as I set my second cup down, I went, okay, time to do stuff. And then I was on, you know.
Right.
But this, and the landlady knew that the coffee probably was not the best thing.
Probably not the best option immediately, but yeah. Okay. And it's nice that she brought up some other food here too.
Well, peaches and dry toast are the best for nauseous stuff. Peaches are very good for nausea. So this landlady's sweet. I would like to know more about this landlady now. But yeah, so I felt really, and of course traveling like she did. Oh.
Yeah. Was it #too long travel? Yeah.
Eat right.
We have a room, nice, big, and airy. No apartments are to be found at any cost. I got here at 10 Thursday night, and we went right to bed. Friday I spent most of the day recuperating. Lou didn't get home until about 10 that night. We went to a restaurant and ate a sandwich. Lou had Saturday off, so we slept late, and then we went and had breakfast, and he said he'd like to go for a long walk to Cary Park. I know something had been troubling him, and now on our walk he told me what it was. The chief told him first that he'd be part of ship's crew, and that he'd be here indefinitely. Then he said that Lou had had 21 months shore duty, and that he'd leave here very shortly, in 2 weeks. He's got 5 days due him as leave that he may get, but doubt if he gets leave, for they're probably going to send that draft out too, to allow for leave. Well, I'm sending as much home as I possibly can, so I'll not have all this stuff to bother with. I don't believe he'll let me go to the West Coast with him, but I'm staying here until he leaves. That I know. We're not sure how long she's going to be in Hutchinson, Kansas. Lou doesn't seem sure either, because at first he thought it was one thing, and now it seems that there could be something else. So, uncertainty everywhere.
Well, but if in the previous episodes she was like really anticipating this. Yeah, the movement. And there it is, and it's like, boom, here we go. Yep, just get ready. Keep as very little on hand as person to be able to get up and go whenever you gotta go. And she is preparing for this. They already were boxing things up and sent to Lacona. It seems that she's pretty much going to keep downsizing anything on hand to be able to move as quickly as possible. All right, and then we get to pause on this screen. And what's really interesting here for our audio listeners is in this letter, and what the YouTube audience can see on video, is that Sweetie drew out in this letter the diagram of the apartment that she has, the one-room apartment. Well, it's not really even an apartment, it's just the one room. It's just a room. Yeah, that's it, because there aren't any apartments to be found, as she said. So she wants to describe to Jean what they have. And so I guess we'll just start like the top to the bottom, that there's a stairwell that leads up to the apartment, and she has a door to their room at the top of the stairs. There's a great big closet. Great big. Yep, a closet. And then opposite that really just looks like an entryway because nothing's marked. Once they get past the closet, so if you're walking in a room, imagine you're walking in a room and on your right there's a door to a big closet, and then once you get past where the closet is, it opens up into basically a square. This actually reminds me of like a hotel room when you walk in. Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah, like when
That's
you
a
walk in
great,
there,
yeah,
there'll be a closet
analogy.
right there,
Mm-hmm.
and then the bathroom, and then so you
Yep.
kind of have an entryway when you walk in. Yeah.
Yep. And it's funny you said the hotel thing, right? Because when you walk in, past the closet, she's got a note here that there's a door into an adjacent room but kept locked always. You know how you have those adjacent hotel rooms with the door in between that's locked?
Yeah.
So it is exactly like that. That's a wonderful analogy, Jamie.
Well, thank you.
And then she draws a little square and she says rocking chair. So on their right, once they pass the closet, she's got a rocking chair, and then she notes gas heater made to look like a small fireplace. So that's
Oh,
cute.
lovely.
Yep. There's a window on the right, as they're walking in. The bed, and she says, foot of bed is nice and cool with breeze from the 2 windows. We sleep with our heads to the foot. So she's being very, very precise with everything. So basically, there's on the 2 corners, there's the window on the right and the window directly facing them as they walk into the apartment. A chair sits directly in front of the window, so they have a rocking chair and another chair. And
They have
then,
queen chairs.
yep.
So
Mm-hmm.
they have queen chairs. How lovely.
A dresser in the corner.
This is what I really like. This
Yeah.
is what I really like because she says dresser is catty cornered.
Catty cornered, yeah.
Word.
Mm-hmm.
With a great big mirror, covers me full length.
Yeah, so she's got a full length mirror.
Oh.
Big wardrobe. She's gonna go to Narnia. That's what she's gonna do. She's gonna.
This really does
Yeah.
seem like a very like they have what they need, but yeah, but there's no
Yeah.
bathroom. There's no bathroom, so
Right.
you know that there's a shared bathroom probably on the floor somewhere.
Yeah. No kitchen.
No kitchen.
Yeah. And the only other items in the room that she notes is a table and another chair. So a rocking chair, 2 chairs, a table, a dresser, a big closet, a heater that looks like a fireplace, and the bed. So,
and if you are one of our audio listeners, I would strongly encourage you to go to the website because you can see Sweetie's beautiful handwriting.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes, this is lovely. So this will be up.
Yep, we're gonna put this is gonna be up for this episode on the website so everybody can see her diagram of the apartment in Hutchinson. This is not the last time she's going to diagram out her living space, so we will see it again. But it's sort of as you see the living spaces get bigger, this has to be the smallest living space that we've seen. And your analogy is really apt. It's a hotel room, basically, with a big closet in the front. And you can imagine there's probably other couples and there's probably other individuals that are moving around to the bases where this landlady is probably overseeing more than just Sweetie's place, because if there are no apartments and 25 guys, probably stands to reason that a couple of them are married, some of the women are there, and that this is just a constant movement happening. Now, one of the things in Hutchinson, because Luz had to report to the Navy in Hutchinson. He has a commander there, and that's because there's Naval Air Station Hutchinson. There's NAS Hutchinson there. It was the sister base to NAS Ottumwa. So he's switching bases to yet another naval base where there is no shore. If I were Lou and I'd said, look, you had 21 months of shore leave, my natural rebuttal would be, how is that possible? For there is no shore. You could just try to stay home.
I feel like that probably would not be a very smart thing for Lou to say.
Probably not to a superior, but yet again, for our military, but yet again, for our military historians, here's another naval base in the Midwest, right? That's featuring basically the same thing. The reason, and we know it's the sister base because Stephen Black told us about this, and what he said about it was that they were both basically the bid to build them were simultaneous in Washington. So they were both being planned at the same time and open roughly about the same time. Now, from what I understand, this isn't like the headquarters building. NAS Ottumwa is unique because of the work that's gone into saving that. NAS Hutchinson, I believe, is still an airport. I believe it's still, there's some operation, but it's hard to see from what I understand. And if anybody's in Hutchinson, I'm going to do more research on NAS Hutchinson for what's out there, but it's basically transformed. It's not apparent that like you could go to like the administrative headquarters and it's being restored to be of the World War II era, like what's going on in NAS Ottumwa. So I do hope NAS Ottumwa does a display because they all work together. That's what Stephen had said, to sort of represent Hutchinson a little bit, which would be really cool. And I do have a matchbook cover I'm going to put on the website that has the logo, and we'll get into all of the details with regards to that Naval Air Station But that's where Lou's been sent. So if people are wondering, like, because it does lead to, why are all these troops in Kansas? Like, why is the commander in Kansas? Why would you take Navy guys to Kansas? That's why. There's another naval air station out there. Well, I'll write again soon, but in the meantime, you can boost our morale, which, by the way, is at its lowest ebb, by dashing off a letter 2 or 3 times a day. We haven't yet told Lou's folks that he's being shipped. We're waiting to see where he's going. Do write, won't ya? Love, Lou, and Sweetie.
And her requests for letters.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I know that Sweetie's doing okay. Sometimes, like, that she's doing better, is that she's kind of like, write to me, please.
Yeah, she gets back to her, okay, I'm gonna be okay.
Yeah.
She's not happy.
She's with Lou now for at least 2 weeks.
Yeah, she's been there for a little bit of time. She's had time to process, to move in with whatever they brought. Lou's around, but there's so many question marks about what's gonna transpire in Hutchinson and what's gonna happen here in Kansas. Now, I did want to bring up on the screen, we brought this up in episode 20 for the Philadelphia trip. This is the map of the train routes. So this is again from the Rand McNally Atlas, and this was published 30s and 40s. It's absolutely to the time period. And we'll zoom in here. Now, we have to remember the place of Kansas City. When you're heading to the east, Chicago to this day, with O'Hare and everything else, Chicago's a major hub, and it looks like these little star points. Kansas City is another one. Kansas City is really, it's interesting. I don't know. Have you ever been to Missouri, Jamie?
Mm-mm.
So in Missouri, in St. Louis, which is on the eastern side of Missouri, along the Mississippi River coast, St. Louis is the gateway to the West. And it's because of that, they have the biggest monument ever constructed in the United States, which is the Arch. Yeah. And it's worth seeing the Arch because you can go up into the Arch and they have cable cars that run up to the top of it. My dad was not too happy to be so high up in the air, but I'm like, we're here, we're going. So we went up there into the Arch and we looked out. It's really, really a phenomenal thing to look at. But I like to say that because if the way Missouri is laid out, you have St. Louis on the east, and in the middle you have Jefferson City, which is the capital of Missouri, and the western portion of Missouri on the other side, which is why it's more directly below Des Moines, is Kansas City, directly adjacent to Kansas. I mean, if that wasn't the case, I think we'd have a lot of questions at that point. All right, so here's St. Louis, here's Des Moines, right? And we see here Ottumwa in this area, and she takes the train and it breaks down, she says, about 30 miles outside Ottumwa. So probably in this immediate vicinity, before they even get out of the Iowa state line, it would have broken down. Because Des Moines to Kansas City is marked at being 230 miles. For those that missed the other episode, if you're wondering about some of the numbers here, this is showing the major rail lines of the time period, and the distances between cities is the mile distance. So we get a pretty good sense that train, the Rock Island line that she was taking, Rock Island in reference to over here, see the RI on the eastern portion of Iowa, that's where Rock Island is. That's that Quad Cities area. So they have a line going down to Kansas City. It breaks down and she is stuck for 6 hours at this location. As it heads down into Kansas City, we can see the other places that she mentions in the letter, at least a few of them. We see Newton, we see Topeka, and we see Hutchinson very clearly on the map. Mm-hmm. So you get an idea that what probably happened is it's traveling west, the train, the Santa Fe line that she picks up, which is a really famous rail line. The Santa Fe line is traveling west to Topeka. It's going to drop down, and she's going through Newton. She probably would have liked to take this direct route, the Rock Island, going to Hutchinson. But she wasn't going to wait. She's not dealing with any more 2-bit puddle jumpers. So, sorry if you worked for the Rock Island, but that was not okay. So, she's going to travel down the Santa Fe line. And I love that these got noted on the map, and head into Hutchinson, Kansas. Hutchinson, Kansas, and this was the clue from the end of episode 24, is the Salt City. Big salt production in Hutchinson, Kansas. So in future episodes, we are going to talk about a little bit of the history here, because there's a lot of salt mines and they still produce salt, which, I never really knew any history with that. I kind of assume salt is not something that we were producing in the United States, and it's major here.
I would have not thought that Hutchinson, Kansas, like, because you think, I think Salt Lake
Hutchinson.
City or like out there, you know?
Yeah,
So,
Hutchinson, Kansas. Yeah.
yeah.
And if we look, actually, I brought up some information on Hutchinson, just so we get a little bit of the flavor here. Spoiler alert, it's going to be salty. Salty. Yeah, it's in Reno County,
We're big
Kansas.
dorks. Okay, we're just
right.
so
I'm gonna guess that Reno County is named for Jesse Reno. And isn't that great? It's in Reno County. That's where we really talked for the first time. Was in Reno, Nevada.
Yes, it was.
Look at all that. And it's all named. I'm guessing it's all named for Jesse Reno. That's a Civil War general. Most of these 1840s, 1850s founded areas are named after Jesse Reno. But we'll find out next week if I was right or wrong. I'll look that up later. Locals call it Hutch. She was already doing that. Nickname of the Salt City. It's been home to salt mines since 1887. 2020 census, 40,000. So this is a relatively large city. Now, that whole history with salt, again, we'll save that for another episode. But Salt City, really fascinating.
I think that the definite takeaway from this episode is that we have left Ottumwa.
We have left Ottumwa.
We are not even in Iowa anymore. We are in Kansas.
No, we aren't. We are not in Iowa anymore. We're going to hear from Iowa. Chester's up there. And then I'm going to stop sharing this because I do want to show individuals some of what Union Station looked like at the time. I bought this postcard because it's the lobby of Union Station.
So this is what she would have seen?
This is what she would have seen, yeah. It's circa about 1940s because I wanted to get sort of like a view. So you can see these counters that they're going up to. This is now a cafe. I sat outside this fruit and candy spot because that clock is still there. They saved the station. This is something that can be lost to time, and luckily Kansas City saved the architecture, saved the station. I'll show you some of the photos here. But you can have like an idea that, it's sort of like wandering around this big little market inside. And the way the ticket counters work, and I'm going to go into my pictures here, just so we can sort of get a feel for the times and we can kind of mentally adapt some of the current photos with back then, because this architecture is so huge, it hasn't really changed.
It's really incredible. It's quite beautiful when you look at it. It's actually amazing to me, like how large the building is, like how big and airy.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, this is gigantic. And we think about Gateway to the West, and that's why I was also bringing that up. This is Union Station from a year ago when the photo was taken. So the architecture remains. It's that beautiful Art Deco architecture that they have. They have a big, massive fountain in the front. And opposite, actually, and this is important to also note, opposite Union Station, if like from where I'm standing, if you were to turn around 180 degrees, is the National World War I Museum. And that's a huge, you go up this hill, you go up these steps to the National World War I Museum. If anybody goes to Kansas City, you have to go to the National World War I Museum. There's a reason it's not in Washington, D.C. It's the big National Museum for War that's not in Washington, D.C. Because when this was originally built, the first portion of this, there was no World War II. There was only World War I. So it was just the World War. It was the Great War. And they wanted to make sure with the train travel that people from both of the coasts could get to the museum. So they didn't want to put it in Washington, D.C. because it made it harder for people from the West Coast to travel all the way across the country. So they put it in Kansas City because of Union Station. Think about it. It's right there on the other side. So the travelers could get to a central point of the country to visit the museum. And it is, you can sort of tell it's the same kind of stone, right? From the Union Station. I think since it's important, sweetie, if she walked out the doors of Union, she was there for a number of hours. She probably got a breath of air. We know she would have walked out the front doors and she looked up the hill and she would have seen the World War I Museum. So, it's just really something. But if we go back, and you get to stand up on the tower and all that good stuff. If we go back to Union Station, though, so we remember from the earlier picture we looked at on the postcard with the clock?
Yes.
right? And here's the little cafe.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the clock on the wall. It really hasn't changed. They've been able to restore it. Now they've turned it into like merchandise and things like that. But the amazing thing is where she would have had to wait when she was inside. They have a picture of this from the time my dad's like, I think my mother is somewhere in this picture. And I'm like, it could be any picture from any day. I don't think that's the case, really. But yeah, if we take a look at the main hall, and I really had to step back so you could get a sense of the scale here.
Oh my goodness.
So this is where all the entrances down to the platforms are going to be. And what was here, right now it's just all, you can walk all the way straight back. We're like pews in a church. So imagine tons of pews all the way back. And that's where everybody's waiting for their trains. So she's all by herself. Lou's not there. She's never been here before. She's upset because the train broke down. The Rock Island broke down for 6 hours. And this is where she's sitting while she waits for the Santa Fe line. So it was really phenomenal to be there, and to sort of to know that she, to walk in those footsteps. And I was really trying to just remember that as I was there. It was like she was here, like she breathed this air, like she was in this room, she was waiting for her train to get to Kansas in this spot. And I'm just so grateful again to the people that restore the histories, because you get to have these moments. And how many people in our shared past probably went through Union Station, probably almost everybody from that generation at one point in their life, with the amount of travel, with the museum there, we're probably there even if they never wrote about it. So this is a really unique piece of history that's been saved, and it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful to behold. So despite how aggravated she was when she was there, they do have a display about the trains at the time. We're going to have to really get a guest on that really knows trains for sure. But their display there for trains does have a picture of the Santa Fe line. Here's what the Santa Fe looked like when it was going through Kansas City.
So that's what she would have seen coming in.
Yeah, that's the one she's gonna see coming in, and then she's gonna take that to Hutchinson. She's gonna switch lines. The reason that I have this picture is because there is a big model, if you go in, as like a little museum in Union Station that has like a train running through, and they have all of this artwork.
Oh, look at how cool. I love little miniature things like this.
Yep. Yeah. So if you're a fan of little mini railroads, you have to like walk all the way, I think it's at the end of the hall. So you have to walk all the way back there and then go check out this artwork. But it's really, really great. And there's some fun things here. There's the Kansas City Southern, what that would have looked like. They have some of the old signs, right? The Pony Express. I've always heard about the Pony Express. They also have a T-Rex on the tracks. So I don't think that's from the 40s. But
that's fun.
That's fun.
I like it. I mean, they have gnomes up here too.
Yeah, there's some gnomes. There's some gnomes. Somebody put a lot of work into. Yeah, I really like the T-Rex. It's eating the sign of the Union Station Beach Club right in front of the Kansas City Southern. And they have all these. Yeah, but I thought this was really great that we can see a picture of what Santa Fe.
Yeah, what the train looked like.
What it looked like at the time.
It looks neat.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sure it was a lot dirtier than that, but it looks really cool.
Yeah. So, well, new adventures, but to new adventures in Kansas. Mm-hmm. In Kansas.
Yes. And that I think brings us to the end of episode 25.
It does. It brings us to the end of episode 25. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the podcast, for watching the podcast. Please like, share, and subscribe if you are following along on the YouTube channel. If you are listening to our audio only on the various channels, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify, if you can leave a review there, we're very appreciative of that. We know that the audience is growing. So thank you to everybody who has done so, that will do so in the future. Check out the pictures on lovesweetiepodcast.com so that you get to, enjoy a lot of the artwork, especially if you're on audio only. A lot of these pictures are going to be posted there in the photo albums. I'll have an Ottumwa album posted, and now we'll start the Kansas album. That's really the plan, because now, since we're moving locations, that's it. But Jamie, it's just been such a pleasure to record 25 episodes with you so far, and as we journey, as we start the next leg of Sweetie's journey here with Lou.
Yeah, I thank everybody for being on this journey with us. We're moving on. and it does feel very significant. But I'm really looking forward to this. I'm really looking forward to Hutchinson. If anybody has any suggestions for things that you would like us to look into at this time, if anybody, you maybe have family that was in Hutchinson, or if you have things that that would be relevant to the podcast, please reach out.
Yes, definitely. And then I figured we'd end the podcast with just saying one thing. Dogs are great. I really like dogs. Sweetie's gonna have a lot of dogs in her lifetime. So is her family. Wonderful animals. And Toto, I'm sure, is a well-beloved dog for a lot of people. But hey, move over, Dorothy. Sweetie just arrived.